Today, we're diving into a wild story about how a political standoff between the US and Venezuela basically shut down travel to one of the most popular vacation spots in the world, leaving, you guessed it, thousands of people completely stranded. I mean, it's a question you probably don't even think to ask when you're booking a trip to the beach, right? You check the weather, you read the hotel reviews, but do you ever check the geopolitical forecast?
Well, for thousands of travelers who thought they were heading to paradise, the answer was a sudden, chaotic yes. A situation happening miles and miles away literally grounded their planes and threw everything into complete turmoil.
So, how on earth did this happen? Let's break down the chain reaction that just rippled across the entire region. It's a textbook case of cause and effect, and it all started with a single political flashpoint.
It really was like watching dominoes fall. First, you had U.S. military activity ramping up because of the political crisis in Venezuela. Then, in response, the FAA, that's the U.S. Aviation Authority, slapped immediate safety restrictions on all the surrounding airspace. And the direct result of that, a massive wave of flight cancellations all across the Caribbean. Just like that.
And believe me, this wasn't just some logistical headache for a few airlines. The impact spread like a ripple in a pond, and it ended up touching everything from individual travelers to the economies of entire countries.
In the moment, it was just pure chaos. We're talking about thousands of passengers stuck mid-trip. You've got airlines scrambling, handing out travel waivers to really angry customers. And at the same time, governments start raising their travel warnings, which just adds a whole other layer of stress and uncertainty to the mix.
To give you an idea of just how big this was, get this. At the peak of the whole thing, nearly 60% of all flights at the main airport in San Juan, Puerto Rico were canceled. 60%! That is a paralyzing shutdown for a major travel hub.
And this brings up a really important point that tourism experts always talk about. The fear of something happening can be just as damaging as the thing itself. Travelers start asking, hey, is it even safe to go there? Even if their resort is hundreds of miles away from any actual tension. For the tourism industry, that feeling, that perceived risk, becomes a very expensive reality.
And the threat wasn't just to flights. The cruise lines, which are the absolute lifeblood for so many Caribbean islands, had to think about rerouting their ships. But the biggest long-term danger was the drop in future bookings, as tourists just decide to go somewhere that feels a little more stable.
Okay, so let's zoom in a little. How did all this actually play out for the individual islands and the destinations that people know and love?
This table kind of lays it all out. Puerto Rico, as we said, got hit the hardest when it came to flights. The ABC Islands, that's Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao, they also saw tons of cancellations. And even the Virgin Islands and places further east felt those knock-on effects with flight and cruise delays. The bottom line here is that nobody was completely insulated from this.
Now, let's turn to ground zero. While its neighbors were dealing with temporary problems, Venezuela's own tourism industry was facing a much more devastating and permanent blow.
I mean, the contrast here is just stark. It really wasn't that long ago that Venezuela was a hotspot, featured in big tour packages, a regular stop for cruise ships. And now, it's basically been wiped off the mainstream tourism map. Whatever industry is left relies almost completely on people traveling within the country itself.
And here's the biggest reason why. Multiple governments like the US and the UK have put out these really strong travel advisories. And these aren't just suggestions, they're official warnings about serious dangers. For international tourism, a high-level travel advisory is a giant red light. It just stops everything.
Okay, so what does all this mean for you, the traveler? How can you protect your vacation plans and yourself in a world where things can change this fast? Let's put together a simple playbook.
It boils down to 3 simple but absolutely critical steps. First, before you even think about booking, check the official travel advisories from your government. Second, as your trip gets closer, don't just rely on an app, call the airline and confirm your flight schedule directly. And finally, you have to look into your insurance.
Because, and this is so important, not all travel insurance is the same. You have to ask really specific questions. Does it cover you if your trip is canceled because of a political event? And here's a big one. Is your coverage totally voided if you travel to a place that has an active advisory against it? Trust me, the fine print is everything.
And that really brings us to a final thought. This whole incident just goes to show how connected everything is. A political fight in one country can literally ground your flight to a totally different one. It kind of makes you wonder, is any destination, anywhere, truly an island? It's something to think about next time you plan that perfect getaway.